The diner's neon sign buzzed like a trapped wasp, casting a red glow over the cracked vinyl booth where my son, Ethan, sat staring at his hands. He was 16, all lanky limbs and quiet defiance. But tonight his shoulders slumped like he carried the weight of the world. "Dad, I'm gay," he'd said an hour ago, his voice barely above a whisper. And I'd frozen, my coffee cup halfway to my lips, as if the world had tilted off its axis. I wasn't ready for it. Not in Pine Creek, Ohio, where the biggest scandal was Mrs. Harper's prize-winning roses getting trampled by a stray dog. This was a town of church picnics, football Fridays, and unspoken rules I'd followed my whole life. My name's Tom Carver, a mechanic with grease-stained hands and a life built on keeping things simple. Divorced, distant from my ex-wife, and now staring at my only kid like he was a stranger. I loved Ethan. God knows I did. But those words, "I am gay," hit like a sledgehammer, cracking open fears I didn't know I had. The diner was nearly empty, just the hum of the jukebox playing some old Springsteen tune. Ethan's eyes flicked up, searching my face for something acceptance, maybe, or forgiveness. I didn't know what to give him. "We'll figure this out," I said, my voice rough, like I was trying to convince myself. But inside, panic clawed at me. What did this mean for him? For us? For the life I'd imagined he'd have? I thought of Marcus. Marcus Kane, my old college buddy, the guy who'd always had an answer for everything. Back in the 90s, he'd been wild partying, chasing guys, living loud and unapologetic. Then he changed. Found faith, got married, swore he was fixed. He ran a counseling group now, something about guiding people back to the right path. I hadn't seen him in years, but his emails still popped up occasionally, full of calm certainty. If anyone could help Ethan, it was Marcus. Right. "Ethan," I said, leaning forward, my hands gripping the table. "I'm not mad. I want what's best for you. There's someone I think you should talk to. Someone who gets it." His brow furrowed, but he nodded, trusting me like he always had. That trust felt like a knife in my gut. I pulled out my phone and texted Marcus, "Need your help. Ethan's struggling. Can we meet?" The reply came fast, of course. "Tom, bring him to me." The drive to Marcus's place in Columbus the next day was silent, the kind of silence that presses against your chest. Ethan stared out the window, earbuds in, his hoodie pulled tight like armor. I kept my eyes on the road, gripping the wheel too hard, replaying his confession in my head. I didn't know how to talk to him about this. I'd raised him alone since he was 8, after his mom left for a better life in California. I taught him how to throw a baseball, change a tire, stand up to bullies. But this was uncharted. Marcus lived in a tidy suburb, his house all white picket fences and manicured lawns. When he opened the door, he looked almost the same as he did 20 years ago at all, broad-shouldered, with a disarming smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. "Tom," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "Been too long." His eyes slid to Ethan, softening. "And this must be Ethan. Come on in." The living room was warm, with bookshelves stuffed with theology texts and a cross hanging above the fireplace. Marcus's wife, Sarah, brought us iced tea, her smile polite but distant. Ethan sat on the edge of the couch, his knee bouncing. I explained everything: Ethan's confession, my confusion, the fear that he'd face a life of judgment in Pine Creek. Marcus listened, nodding, his hands folded like he was praying. "Ethan," Marcus said, his voice smooth as polished wood, "what you're feeling is real, but it's not the end of the story. I've been where you are. I know the struggle, the pull of it. But there's a way through. A way to find peace. He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto Ethan's. You don't have to be defined by this. I felt a flicker of relief. Marcus got it. He'd lived it. Ethan just nodded, his expression unreadable. They talked for an hour, mostly Marcus asking gentle questions about school, friends, what Ethan wanted from life. I sat there, sipping tea, thinking maybe this was the answer. Marcus could guide him, show him a way to fit in, to avoid the pain I was terrified he'd face. When we left, Marcus pulled me aside. Give me some time with him, Tom. I'll work with him one-on-one. He's a good kid, just lost. I've seen it before. His confidence was a lifeline, and I grabbed it. Over the next few weeks, Ethan went to Marcus's place every Saturday. I'd drop him off, then head to a coffee shop to wait, scrolling through my phone, trying not to think about what they were discussing. Ethan didn't say much when he came back, just, it was fine, or we talked. I didn't push. I trusted Marcus. He'd been my rock back in college, the guy who'd talk me through my own doubts when life felt too big. If he said he could help Ethan, I believed him. But something was off. Ethan started pulling away. He'd always been quiet, but now he was a ghost in our house, headphones on, door closed, eyes avoiding mine. At dinner, he'd push food around his plate, answering my questions with one-word grunts. I told myself it was normal teenage stuff, that Marcus's counseling was probably stirring up emotions. Change takes time, right? One night, I found him in the garage, sitting on an old lawn chair, staring at a photo of him and his mom from years ago. His eyes were red, and my heart sank. Ethan, talk to me, I said, crouching beside him. What's going on? He shook his head, his voice barely a whisper. You wouldn't get it, Dad. Try me, I said, desperate to bridge the gap. He looked at me, his eyes sharp with something I couldn't name, anger, maybe, or pain. Marcus says I can change, that I should change. But what if I don't want to? His words hit like a punch. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. I'd sent him to Marcus to help him, to make things easier, but now he looked more lost than ever. What had I done? That night, I couldn't sleep. Ethan's words looped in my head. What if I don't want to change? They weren't just a question, they were a challenge. A plea. A crack in the foundation I'd built for us. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The hum of the refrigerator downstairs, the only sound in the house. I'd sent him to Marcus to fix things, to make him fit into the world I knew. But what if the world I knew was wrong? The next morning, I found Ethan at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone, his face pale. You okay? I asked, pouring coffee, trying to keep my voice steady. He shrugged, not looking up. Fine. I wanted to push, to ask what Marcus was saying, what was making him retreat further into himself. But I didn't. Instead, I said, you don't have to go today if you don't want to. His eyes flicked up, surprised, then wary. You sure? Yeah, I said, though my gut twisted. I'd promised Marcus another session, but seeing Ethan like the shallowed out, like he was carrying a secret too heavy for his frame, made me question everything. Let's take a break. Just you and me today. Maybe hit the lake. He nodded, a small spark of relief in his eyes. We spent the day fishing at Pine Creek Lake, the water still and glassy under the autumn sun. Ethan didn't say much, but he laughed when I fumbled the bait. And for a moment, it felt like we were us again, father and son. No walls between us. I wanted to ask about Marcus, about what was weighing him down, but I didn't want to shatter the moment. Not yet. On Monday, I called Marcus. Ethan's taking a break, I said, pacing the garage, the smell of oil and metal grounding me. He's been off lately. Quiet. Marcus's voice was calm, unshaken. That's normal, Tom. He's processing. This stuff, it stirs up a lot. Give it time. He's fighting urges he doesn't fully understand yet. Urges. I frowned, gripping the phone tighter. He's 16. Marcus. He's not I don't know, some addict. A pause. Then Marcus's voice softened. I know it's hard to hear, but I've seen this before. He's confused, looking for identity in the wrong places. My program, it's about redirecting that energy, giving him a purpose that aligns with who he's meant to be. I wanted to believe him. Marcus had always been the one with answers, the one who could talk circles around anyone. But something in his tone, too smooth, too certain, set my teeth on edge. What exactly are you telling him? I asked. We're exploring his values, his faith, Marcus said, helping him see there's a bigger picture. He's responding, Tom. He just needs to commit. I hung up, uneasy. Faith. Values. Those were words I'd grown up with, words that anchored Pine Creek. But they felt slippery now, like they were being used to build a cage instead of a home. That week, Ethan started opening up, but not in the way I'd hoped. At dinner one night, he pushed his plate away and said, Dad, do you think I'm broken? The question stopped my heart. What? No, Ethan, you're not broken. Why would you say that? He looked down, his fingers tracing the edge of the table. Marcus says being gay is a choice. That it's unnatural. That I can fix it if I try hard enough. But I don't feel like it's a choice. It's just me. My throat tightened. I'd sent him to Marcus to help him, not to make him feel like a defect. You're not broken, I said, my voice firm. You're my son. I love you. We'll figure this out together. Okay. He nodded, but his eyes stayed on the table, like he didn't believe me. That night, I dug through my old emails, looking for Marcus's messages about his counseling group. The website was polished, full of testimonials from changed men, smiling couples, and Bible quotes. It looked convincing. But Ethan's words kept echoing. It's just me. I started noticing things I hadn't before. Ethan's sketchbook, usually filled with drawings of cars and landscapes, now had pages torn out. His phone was always locked, his conversations clipped. When I asked about his friends, he'd shrug and say, they're fine. But I knew his best friend, Jamie, hadn't been over in weeks. Something was wrong, and I'd been too blind to see it. On Friday, I drove to Columbus without telling Ethan. I needed answers. Marcus welcomed me into his office, a small room behind his house, lined with more books and a single framed photo of him and Sarah on their wedding day. Tom, good to see you, he said, gesturing to a chair. What's on your mind? Ethan's not himself, I said, cutting to the chase. He's withdrawn. Marcus. He thinks he's broken. What are you telling him? Marcus leaned back, his expression calm but guarded. I'm giving him tools, Tom. Tools to navigate a world that's not kind to people like him. I'm showing him there's a way to live without shame, without conflict. By telling him he's unnatural. I snapped, my voice louder than I meant. He's a kid, Marcus. He's not some project for you to fix. Marcus's eyes narrowed, just for a second, before his smile returned. You're upset. I get it. But I've been through this, Tom. I know what it's like to feel trapped in a life that doesn't fit. I'm offering him freedom, Freedom. I stood, my hands clenched. He's miserable. Marcus. He's not free. He's scared. Marcus stood too, his voice steady but cold. You asked for my help, Tom. You wanted him to be okay. This is how it works. It's not easy, but it's worth it. I left without another word, my heart pounding. Driving home, I realized I'd made a mistake. I trusted Marcus because he was familiar, because he'd promised a solution. But Ethan wasn't a problem to be solved. He was my son. When I got home, Ethan was in his room. The door cracked open. I knocked softly and stepped inside. He was on his bed, sketching, his pencil moving furiously across the page. Can we talk? I asked. He looked up, wary, but nodded. I sat on the edge of his bed, searching for the right words. I want to see Marcus today, I said. I told him you're not going back. Ethan's pencil stopped. Why? Because you're not happy, I said. And I don't think he's helping you. I think I made a mistake sending you to him. He stared at me, his eyes wide, like he was seeing me for the first time. Then he looked away, his voice quiet. He told me I could be normal if I tried. That I could stop feeling this way. But I don't know if I can. Or if I want to. My chest ached. I wanted to fix this, to take away his pain, but I didn't know how. Ethan, you don't have to change who you are. Not for me. Not for Marcus. Not for anyone. He didn't respond, just kept staring at his sketchbook. I glanced at the Paglia drawing of two hands reaching for each other, fingers almost touching. It was raw, full of longing. I didn't know what to say, so I just sat there, hoping my presence was enough. The next few days were tense. Ethan was still distant, but he started spending more time downstairs, watching TV or helping me in the garage. I tried to keep things light, talking about school or the Browns' latest game, but the air between us was heavy with unspoken questions. I started researching, late at night when Ethan was asleep, reading about conversion therapy, about the damage it could do. The stories were gut-wrenching, kids disowned, broken, lost to despair. I felt sick, realizing how close I'd come to pushing Ethan down that path. One evening, I found a flyer in Ethan's backpack for a local LGBTQ youth group in Columbus. It was crumpled, like he'd been carrying it around, unsure what to do with it. I left it on his desk, hoping he'd see it as a sign I was trying. The next morning, he brought it up. You saw the flyer? He asked, his voice cautious. Yeah, I said. You thinking about going? He hesitated, then nodded. Maybe. Jamie goes. He says it's nice. Like, people get it. Jamie's gay too. I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. Ethan nodded, his eyes on the floor. Yeah. He came out last year. His parents were cool about it. I swallowed the pang of jealousy that Jamie's parents had handled it better than I had. If you want to go, I'll drive you, I said. No pressure. Just, if you want. He looked at me, a flicker of hope in his eyes. Okay. The youth group met in a community center in Columbus, a low brick building with rainbow flags in the windows. Ethan was nervous, his hands stuffed in his pockets as we walked in. The room was lively, kids laughing, music playing, a table covered with snacks. A woman with short purple hair and a warm smile introduced herself as Lena, the group leader. You must be Ethan, she said, shaking his hand. And your dad. She turned to me, her eyes kind but assessing. Tom, I said, shaking her hand. Just here to support. Lena nodded, like she'd seen 100 nervous parents before me. We're glad you're both here. Ethan, want to join the group? We're just starting. Ethan glanced at me, and I gave him a nod. He walked over to a circle of kids, where Jamie waved him over, his face lighting up. I sat in the corner, watching as Ethan slowly relaxed, laughing at something Jamie said. For the first time in weeks, he looked like himself again. Lena sat beside me, her voice low. It's not easy, is it? Being the parent. I shook my head. I thought I was doing the right thing. I sent him to someone I trusted, and it messed him up. She nodded, no judgment in her eyes. You're here now? That's what matters. He's lucky to have you. I didn't feel lucky. I felt like I'd failed him. But seeing him smile, even just a little, gave me hope. That night, Ethan talked more than he had in weeks. Over pizza, he told me about the group, about kids who'd been through worse, kicked out, shunned, but still found a way to keep going. They're strong, he said, his voice full of awe. Like, they don't let anyone tell them who they are. You're strong too, I said, meaning it. He shrugged, but a small smile tugged at his lips. For the first time, I saw a glimpse of the kid I'd raised, resilient, kind, brave. But I couldn't shake the guilt. Marcus was still out there, preaching his fix to other kids, other families. I trusted him blindly, and it had almost cost me my son. The youth group became a weekly ritual. Every Saturday, I'd drive Ethan to Columbus, and he'd come back a little brighter, a little more like himself. He started talking about college, about art school, about a future I hadn't dared imagine for him. But the shadow of Marcus lingered. I couldn't stop thinking about the other kids he was counseling, the ones who didn't have a dad like Maflawed, but trying. One night, I sat Ethan down. I need to know, I said, my voice steady but heavy. What did Marcus say to you? All of it. Ethan's face tightened, but he didn't shut down. He said a lot of stuff. He started, his voice low. That being gay was a sin, but I could overcome it with discipline. He showed me videos, guys talking about how they'd changed, how they were happier now. He said if I didn't try, I'd end up alone, rejected by everyone. My hands clenched under the table. He said that to you? Ethan nodded. He was nice about it, Dad. Like he cared. But it felt wrong. Like he was trying to erase me. I wanted to punch something, preferably Marcus's smug face. Instead, I reached for Ethan's hand. You're not alone, I said. And you're not wrong. I'm so sorry I put you through that. He squeezed my hand, just for a second, then let go. It's okay, Dad. You didn't know. But I should have. That was the part that ate at me. I started digging deeper into Marcus's program. His website was slick, but the more I read, the more it felt like a trap, promises of healing wrapped in Bible verses and pseudoscience. I found forums where former clients shared their stories, shame, depression, even suicide attempts. One post mentioned a kid who'd been in Marcus's group last year, a boy named Caleb who'd run away from home after months of therapy. My stomach churned. How many others were there? I called Lena, the youth group leader, and asked for advice. You're not the first parent to fall for this, she said. Conversion therapy, it's a machine. It preys on fear and love. Parents want to protect their kids, and people like Marcus exploit that. What can I do? I asked. I can't just let him keep doing this. Lena was quiet for a moment. Talk to Ethan. See if he's willing to share his experience. Sometimes, speaking out is the only way to stop it. I wasn't sure Ethan was ready. But I brought it up the next day. What if we told people about Marcus? I asked. About what he's doing. Ethan's eyes widened. Like, publicly. Maybe, I said. If you're okay with it. It could help other kids. He thought about it, his fingers tapping nervously on the table. I don't know, Dad. It's scary. I know, I said. We don't have to decide now. Just think about it. A week later, Ethan came to me with a notebook. I wrote something, he said, handing it over. It's what happened with Marcus. Everything. I read it that night, my hands shaking. It was raw, unfiltered, every word Marcus had said, every doubt he'd planted, every moment Ethan had felt like he was drowning. But it was also powerful, a testament to his strength, his refusal to let Marcus define him. At the end, he'd written, I'm still here. And I'm still me. Ethan, I said, my voice thick. This is incredible. Are you sure you want to share it? He nodded, his jaw set. Yeah. If it stops even one person from going through what I did, it's worth it. We worked with Lena to get Ethan's story out. She connected us with a local journalist, a woman named Rachel who'd been covering conversion therapy bans in Ohio. Rachel met us at the diner, the same one where Ethan had come out to me. She listened as Ethan read his story aloud, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. I sat beside him, proud and terrified, knowing this was bigger than us now. Rachel's article came out a week later, front page of the Columbus Dispatch. It didn't name Marcus directly legal reasons, Rachel said, but it described his program in detail, quoting Ethan's words anonymously. The response was immediate. Parents called Lena's group, asking for help. A few kids reached out, saying they'd been through Marcus's program too. One of them was Caleb, the boy who'd run away. He was safe now, living with an aunt in Cincinnati. Marcus called me the day after the article dropped. Tom, what the hell is this? He snapped, his calm facade gone. You're letting Ethan destroy everything I've built. You did that yourself, I said, my voice cold. You hurt my son. You hurt other kids. This stops now. He laughed, bitter and sharp. You think you're saving him. You're setting him up for a life of pain. You'll see. I hung up, my hands shaking with rage. But deep down, I was scared. What if he was right? What if I was failing Ethan again? The article lit a fire in Pine Creek. People whispered in the grocery store, at church, in the barber shop. Some supported Ethan, leaving notes in our mailbox with words like brave and stay strong. Others weren't so kind. A brick came through our garage window one night, with a note tied to it, freak. I didn't let Ethan see it, but he knew. He saw the looks at school, heard the murmurs. Pine Creek wasn't ready for this, and neither was I. But Ethan was stronger than I'd given him credit for. He kept going to the youth group, kept drawing, kept living. One day, he brought Jamie over, and the two of them spent hours in the garage, laughing over some dumb video game. I watched from the kitchen, my heart swelling. This was the kid I'd raised resilient, even when the world pushed back. I wasn't as resilient. Marcus's words haunted me, a life of pain. I'd lie awake, imagining Ethan alone, rejected, struggling. I'd failed him once by sending him to Marcus. What if I was failing him again by letting him be himself? The doubt was a poison, seeping into every moment of pride I felt. Lena invited me to a parents' meeting at the youth group. I wasn't sure I belonged, but I went. The room was full of moms and dads like me, scared, confused, trying to do right by their kids. One woman, Maria, shared how her daughter had attempted suicide after conversion therapy. Another dad, Greg, talked about disowning his son, only to beg for forgiveness years later. Their stories broke me open, forcing me to face my own fears, my own failures. I thought I was protecting him, I said when it was my turn. I sent him to someone I trusted, and it almost destroyed him. I don't know how to make that right. Maria reached for my hand. You're here, she said. That's how you start. I drove home with a new resolve. Ethan wasn't the one who needed fixing. I was. I'd been so caught up in my fear, my need to control his future, that I hadn't seen him for who he was. That had to change. The next week, Ethan and I went to a Pride event in Columbus. His first. He was nervous, clutching Jamie's hand like a lifeline, but his eyes lit up at the sight of the floats, the music, the people unapologetically themselves. I stood on the sidelines, watching him dance with Jamie, both of them laughing, free. For the first time, I saw the future not as a threat, but as a possibility. That night, Ethan showed me a new drawing, a vibrant sketch of the Pride Parade, all color and movement. This is me, he said, pointing to a figure in the crowd, small but bold, holding a rainbow flag. And this is you. He pointed to another figure, standing nearby, smiling. I choked up. I'm proud of you, I said, pulling him into a hug. And I'm sorry it took me so long to get here. He hugged me back, tight. You're here now? But Marcus wasn't done. A week later, I got a letter from his lawyer, threatening a defamation lawsuit over the article. My first instinct was panic: legal fees, public scrutiny, Ethan dragged into a mess I'd started. But then I read Ethan's story again, the one he'd written for Rachel. Every word was true, every pain real. Marcus could threaten all he wanted, but he couldn't erase that. I called Rachel, who connected me with a lawyer named Priya, who worked pro bono for cases like this. He's bluffing, Priya said after reading the letter. He doesn't want this in court. Too much exposure. But if he pushes, we'll push back harder. Priya's confidence steadied me, but the fear lingered. I didn't tell Ethan about the letter. He was finally finding his footing, and I wouldn't let Marcus take that away. Ethan started writing more. Sharing his story on a blog Lena helped him set up. Kids from across Ohio commented, saying his words gave them hope. One night, he read me a message from a boy in Toledo. I thought I was alone. Your story made me feel like I could keep going. Ethan's eyes shone with pride, but also something deeper: purpose. You're doing something big, I told him. Bigger than I ever could. He smiled, shy but sure. We're doing it together, Dad. And we were. For the first time, I felt like his partner, not just his protector. But the fight wasn't over. Marcus's program was still running, and every day it continued. More kids were at risk. The lawsuit never came. Priya was right. Marcus backed off, likely scared of the scrutiny a court case would bring. But his program didn't stop. I saw his flyers at the local church, heard whispers of new clients. Every time I thought about it, my blood boiled. Ethan was healing, but others were still caught in Marcus's web, and I couldn't shake the guilt of having trusted him in the first place. Ethan, though, was thriving. The youth group had become his second home, and he'd started mentoring younger kids, sharing his story with a quiet confidence that made me proud. He and Jamie were inseparable, their friendship blossoming into something more. I caught them holding hands one day, and instead of the panic I'd felt months ago, I felt a quiet joy. Ethan was happy. That was enough. But the past wasn't done with us. One evening, Caleb, the boy who'd run away from Marcus's program, reached out. He wanted to meet. We drove to Cincinnati, where he was staying with his aunt. Caleb was slight, with haunted eyes, but his voice was steady as he told us his story. Marcus had promised him freedom too, but all he'd gotten was shame. He made me hate myself, Caleb said, his hands twisting in his lap. I thought running was my only option. Ethan listened, his face tight with anger. I'm sorry, he said. I know what it's like. Caleb shook his head. You got out. That's what matters. And you're speaking up. That's why I wanted to meet you. Caleb had been working with a local advocacy group, pushing for a state ban on conversion therapy for minors. He asked Ethan to join him, to share his story at a rally in Columbus. It could make a difference, Caleb said. People listen when it's real. Ethan looked at me, uncertain. I nodded. It's your call, kid. I'm with you either way. The rally was held on the steps of the Ohio State House, a sea of rainbow flags and determined faces. Ethan was nervous, his hands shaking as he held the microphone, but his voice was clear. He told his story coming out, Marcus's program, the pain of being told he was broken. The crowd was silent, then erupted in applause when he finished. I stood at the back, tears in my eyes, watching my son become a voice for others. Caleb spoke next, then Lena, then parents and survivors. The air was electric, full of hope and defiance. I realized this was bigger than Ethan, bigger than me. It was a fight for every kid who'd been told they weren't enough. After the rally, Ethan and I walked through downtown Columbus, the city alive with lights and possibility. You were amazing, I said, slinging an arm around his shoulders. He grinned, a real grin, the kind I hadn't seen in too long. I was terrified, but it felt right. You're changing things, I said. I'm so damn proud of you. He looked at me, his eyes serious. You're changing too, Dad. You didn't have to do all this. But you did. I didn't know how to respond, so I just pulled him into a hug. For the first time, I felt like I was doing right by him. Back in Pine Creek, the backlash continued. Some neighbors stopped talking to us, and the garage lost a few customers. But others stepped up, Mrs. Harper brought us casseroles, and the high school art teacher offered Ethan a spot in an advanced class. The world was shifting, slowly, and we were part of it. I started attending the parents' group regularly, learning how to be a better ally, a better dad. I listened to stories of kids who'd lost everything, and parents who'd found their way back to their children. It wasn't easy. Every meeting forced me to face my own mistakes, but it was worth it. One night, Ethan came to me with a new drawing, a portrait of us, standing side by side, the diner in the background. This is us now, he said. Not perfect, but together. I framed it, hung it above the fireplace. It was a reminder of how far we'd come, and how much further we had to go. But Marcus was still out there. Lena told me his program was losing clients, but he was doubling down, hosting seminars, recruiting new counselors. I couldn't let it go. Not after what he'd done to Ethan, to Caleb, to countless others. I reached out to Rachel, who was working on a follow-up article. She connected me with a group of survivors who were gathering evidence against Marcus's program, testimonials, financial records, anything that could expose him. I wasn't sure what I could offer, but I knew I had to try. The evidence against Marcus piled up. Survivors shared their stories, each one a knife to the heart. Kids as young as 14, told they were broken, unworthy, doomed. Ethan's story was the spark, but Caleb and others fanned the flames. Rachel's follow-up article was a bombshell, naming Marcus's program explicitly and linking it to a network of similar groups across Ohio. The state launched an investigation, and Marcus's seminars were canceled one by one. I didn't celebrate. Not yet. The damage he'd done was still raw, and Ethan was still healing. But when the state passed a ban on conversion therapy for minors, I felt a weight lift. Ethan was at the signing ceremony, standing with Caleb and Lena, his face beaming with pride. I watched from the crowd, my heart full. This was his victory, and I was honored to be part of it. Life didn't magically get easier. Pine Creek was still Pine Creek, with its small-town judgments and whispered gossip. But Ethan was unshaken. He graduated high school with honors, his art portfolio earning him a scholarship to a college in Chicago. Jamie was going too, and they were already planning their apartment, their laughter filling our house with hope. The night before he left, we sat in the diner, the same booth where he'd come out to me. The neon sign still buzzed, but the air felt different, lighter, like we'd earned it. "You nervous?" I asked, sipping my coffee. "A little," he admitted, grinning. "But I'm ready." I nodded, my throat tight. "You're gonna do great things, Ethan. You already have." He reached across the table, his hand resting on mine. "Thanks, Dad, for everything." I wanted to say more, to tell him how sorry I was for the mistakes I'd made, how proud I was of his courage. But I didn't need to. He knew. Marcus disappeared from Pine Creek not long after the ban. Rumor was he'd moved to another state, chasing new clients, new ways to sell his lies. I didn't care where he went, as long as he was gone. But I'd never forget what he'd revealed, not just about himself, but about me. My fear, my ignorance, had almost cost me my son. That was the real destruction, the one I'd carry forever. But I'd also learned. Ethan taught me what it meant to be brave, to stand up, to love without conditions. He'd shown me that family isn't about fixing each other, it's about fighting for each other, no matter what. As I watched him drive off to Chicago, his car packed with sketchbooks and dreams, I knew we'd be okay. Not perfect, not without scars, but together. And that was enough.